In 1946, the records show it was the worst polio epidemic in the Midwest, at least in Minnesota. 4,000 and some came down with polio. And there was panic. And one of the doctors said, we have two epidemics. Polio is one, panic is another. And that was true because the towns all around shut down anything that crowds would gather because it was very infectious. The swimming pools, there was a swimming pool in Rochester here that some of the people on the board were still letting other kids come from different towns, and some said, why are you doing that? There's polio cases coming from those towns. So in the summers they would shut everything down and everybody was scared, very, very scared of polio. And because many died the same year, 1946, that I also came down with polio. And Dr. A. Felt in our small town of Casson came over and did a bit of diagnosis himself, and he said, I think she's got polio. So we came down to Rochester, and then I had a spinal tap, and that proved that I had polio. So I went into isolation for the next 2 months. Mom could come down after a while. They figured she was a carrier, so she couldn't go anywhere for 2 weeks. She had to stay home too. So, but after when it got to the point where I was out of isolation, then she could come down. At first she came down and helped, but there was so many polio patients, so many the kids that were in the wards that she would help feed other kids too. She'd come and feed me, she'd help feed other kids.
She did some nursing duties.
She did, she did. So after 2 months I could come home, and but only because she promised to, and of course did, but and was trained to do all the physical exercises that I needed. So she was a warrior. Well, this is St. Mary's Hospital, and this is where I came to. But also just down the road, about 4 or 5 blocks, there's a big Mayo system. But when I was a child, of course, it was much, much smaller, and it was started by Charles and William Mayo. Doctors started the clinic in 1889, and there was, at that time they called it a nunnery. I don't think that's the name anymore, but it was
a convent?
Convent type thing. And many had been trained as nurses, evidently. So the St. Mary's Hospital was started then too. At that time there was only 12 beds. Now there's 1,200 beds. Anyway, when I came in then, most of the nursing was done by sisters. And they were
by the nuns.
Yeah.
From the nunnery, from the convent.
Yeah, but they were called sisters. And they were very kind and very gentle. Well, I'm very familiar with these beautiful brass metal doors as you come in, and this lobby with the same floor, marble floor, inlaid with different kinds of marble colored. Because this is what I came in always before my surgeries. And Mom never told me more than 3 or 4 days before I was supposed to have surgery, because I would worry myself sick. So she learned real quick that in a couple days you can have surgery. So I didn't have that long to worry about it. So we'd come in, and I had many surgeries. And the first one is when I was 3 years old, and the second one when I was 7 years old, and the third and fourth when I was 12, and the fifth when I was 14. I've come here for many surgeries since then, but those were the ones that related. Those are orthopedic surgeries.
Yeah, because one leg didn't grow as fast as the other, because polio kind of knocks out the muscles in certain people in certain areas.
It does. So it affected my foot, how it kind of went to the sideways, and so on the side of my ankle there was a surgery. It started to droop a bit because of the muscles. I didn't have the muscles. And so they did surgery that pulled it up. And then 2 of the surgeries were it was called a fistula, and it was experimental. And I think they had done it on dogs, but I think I was the 15th in the world to have this done. But my mom was courageous. The doctor said, I'm certain this is going to help. And she wanted anything in the world that could help me. So she would say yes. And that was courageous, because I know of people that had polio that the parents wouldn't allow it. So anyway, those surgeries, the first one was when I was 12, and that was to reroute the blood vessels to make my right leg, which I had polio in, grow faster, because it was 1.5 inches shorter. And then after 2 years, when it reached within 1/4 inch of my strong leg, my left leg. And when I was 7 years old, I remember it distinctly. I'd had my surgery, so I had my leg in a cast, and there's this little girl in this big bed, and I was crying. And one of the nurses came in because she had heard me crying. And she said, "Are you okay?" And I just couldn't stop crying. So she picked me up with that doggone cast hanging there. And it was dark. The only light was in the hallway through the door. And she took me to the window, and for a long time, she would point out the stars to me. We talked about the stars. And then she would point out the red lights of the airplanes going in the sky, and we talk about where people are going and where people had come from. And she was as gentle as could be. I could cry thinking of that angel. Maybe she was an angel. So I got tired then, and so she tucked me into bed, and she said, "Now you go to sleep, because your parents will be here tomorrow, your family will be here tomorrow, and they'll be able to see you." And so the last thing I remember is her tucking the blankets around my chin and saying, "Good night, Melanie." And I said, "Good night." And so she went out. But that, I remember every single thing about it.
Yeah. Because Mom's
what
story.
a wonderful young woman.
Yeah. A lot of Mom's stories revolve around the compassion of the nurses.
Yes.
And
compassion of people.
Yeah. But a lot of the hospital workers went above and beyond what they had to do, and you'll never forget it.
No. Because at 7 years old, I was so lonely. And as not just at me, any child in there at that age, you're old enough to understand, but you're still lonely for your mom and your dad. So, but I was usually in for a couple weeks, because that's what they did at that time. And I was so lonesome. I cried and I worried and I made myself sick. I could have gone home, but the doctors said, "No, she needs to come out of this," or whatever. I don't know what they told Mom. So Mom kind of marched in her gentle way, and she said, "You know, you've got to stop this. You're going to come home. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave you now, and I'm going to leave you a bit, because I'm going to go over or go downstairs and I'm going to have lunch. But when I come back, I want you and I to talk about this and decide that you need to change what you're thinking." And so she did, and I had that time to change my thinking. She came up, she says, "Are you doing better?" I says, "Yeah, Mom, I'm little tiny voice, yeah, I'm doing better." So I got to go home soon after that, because Mom was always my comfort. She always had the right words. She always set my thinking into the right direction.
I'm starting to cry thinking of Grandma.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to stop it for a second.
I had two wonderful doctors. Dr. Elkins was the doctor who took care of my general health with polio and physical therapy. And my surgeon was Dr. James, and he was a wonderful surgeon too. In fact, when I went into the hospital when I was just a baby, and I had to be away from my mom and dad for so long in isolation. When Mom and Dad came back to pick me up, I didn't know them. And I didn't want Mom, I wanted the nurse. Mom tried to get me, I cried. Broke her heart. Can you imagine? Your baby doesn't even know you anymore. So this wise doctor, Dr. Jean, said, "I think that you and your daughter need to have a place where you can get reacquainted." And so there was an empty office. He asked a nurse to find an empty office, and he said, "You go in there and you get reacquainted with your daughter." And it didn't take that long. By that time, Sister Kenny had a new theory, a new idea on how to treat polio patients, how to give them strength in those muscles that had atrophied, or hot water baths. And so I remember as a little tiny girl, about 3 years old, in the big, huge stainless steel tub, and then there was a bench all the way around it. It was round, big thing. And so I would sit in there, little tiny person, and it gets so warm, But so they'd bring me little snow cones.
Oh.
So I sit in there and eat my snow cones.
Boiling to death.
Yeah. When I got polio, Mom left me here, of course, and she said that I was crying. They had to take me, and I was in a gurney, and I was crying all the way down the hall. There they stood,
Oh, terrible.
watching me go.
Yeah.
So she headed back to Casson. She didn't want to go home. I don't know if she was by herself or not. I'm pretty sure Dad must have been, but she didn't want to go home. So she went over to Dodge Center to her aunt's or her sister's place and sat at the table. And the whole family had gathered because they knew that I'd gone in. And she was crying because she didn't know what she'd do. And my grandfather, who was my mother's father, my grandfather.
From Denmark.
From Denmark. A man of, you can't even say few words, no words.
Like almost mute.
But he sat there and he says, don't worry, Martha, we'll help you. So that always touched her heart. And it touched my heart because I didn't really have a relationship with him. But Dr. Afeld said they don't have to worry about that. The March of Dimes will take care of it.
Oh yeah, and that's still going pretty well.
They really did. They really helped.
Financially, the March of Dimes is like a foundation where people give money, and then that helps patients like this. And March of Dimes drives around neighborhoods and have people just donate money. I think, didn't we do that?
Oh yeah, many times.
Yeah, I remember walking around our neighborhood.
Yeah, because I said, I'll do it.
Yeah, I'll do it. And she sent me around the neighborhood. But oftentimes people gave what they could, even if it was a few dollars, and every bit helps.
Yeah.
And that's one thing you got to say about our country is that we are a very, very, very generous country.
Yes,
I mean, even if you give $1 or $5 or $5,000,
right? Yeah.
People do give money to help out other people in this country.
That one of the townspeople came up to Mom and said, "Do you know that Melanie is up in that tree?"
She's climbed a tree
with a full cast on my leg. She says, "Is that okay?" And Mom said, "The doctors told me that she should do as much as she can do." It was Mom's philosophy, but she wanted me to try everything. So that was another gift that she had.
Yeah,
she did that.
Which is, I'm sure, the reason that you're doing so well today.
Yeah,
at your age.
Mentally, particularly.
Yeah, the can-do spirit. I'm going to get through it. Take each day as it comes. Keep going.
Yep.
The Mayo Clinic is a learning hospital, and people from all around the world come to learn here, to teach here. And so there was doctors from all around the world, and there's also patients from all around the world that come here because it's a pretty advanced hospital system, which is very much connected to St. Mary's now.
Yes, and they would have conventions from doctors from all over the world, and there was seats and an incline, and then in the bottom there was a big stage. And so I would go down there. I was 7 years old, and probably a contingent of Japanese doctors would walk across the stage, and these doctors would be so close that they'd be touching my leg because they wanted to touch and feel those muscles moving.
Yeah, they wanted to see how the surgeries were working because they wanted to probably do the same surgeries back where they were from.
Yes, and so they needed to see how the muscles were working. Of course, they were trained to know all the muscles in the body. But it was 1946. It was the fourth consecutive year of terrible epidemics. Had been going on for a long, long time. And anyway, there was a radio station, KUOM, in Rochester that decided to do something for all the little kids, that were in isolation in their own homes.
Because nobody could go out after a while.
Everything was shut down. People were so afraid that their children would catch this. They set up a radio station that started in the morning until late, and they had music, and they were comics, and they would read stories, and they would have request time for music. And so these little kids that were sitting home and their parents trying to keep them busy had this to listen to and to be entertained by. I thought that was really wonderful. The building was from that end to that end, but now the whole place is exploded. Behind it is just huge building after huge building after huge.
The Mayo is kind of taken over all of Rochester in a way.
So this is St. Mary's, and that was where you went to have surgery. But the Mayo Clinic is where you got diagnosed, and when plans for your health were made. It's not Rochester anymore; it's the Mayo Clinic. But the Mayo Clinic that I knew, the Gonda building, has they have taken down building after building after building, old buildings, homes, blocks.
A lot of hotels have been built.
Yes.
So a lot of old buildings have been scraped and hotels have taken up because, again, a lot of people from around the world come here and around the country and the world, and they need hotel space.
It's Destination Medical Center.
Yeah. Yep. That's what's become.
Yep, exactly. So anyway, it's a wonderful thing for many people. I've come down here where other doctors haven't found anything, and my doctors down there did. And it was just up at teens. She says, "This is something I want to look further into." And I okay. So they had an ultrasound. Ended up I needed a stent in my artery to my left artery to my kidney because it was blocked.
Yeah.
Nobody else had even paid any attention to any of that. So they do. I mean, they do
Yeah.
catch things.
And there was something going on with my dad that was kind of significant, and nobody caught it at his medical center, but he came down here for his yearly physical, and they caught it, and thankfully.
Thank you, Brothers Mayo, for your dedication to health for the community, and for your tireless contribution to medical science. We are now in Manaville. Manaville is 3 miles to the north of Casson, and our 2 schools were consolidated. And this is a bridge over the Zumbo River. We would ride over here on our bikes, and sometimes we went fishing, or Dad would bring us over here. Like there's a man fishing right there. But all we ever caught was suckers.
What's a sucker?
A sucker is kind of got a big, huge mouth.
How big is it?
Oh, they can be about this
Oh,
one.
okay.
They're not eating fish. They're
No.
just, what are they called?
Gross sucker fish. That suck the faces.
Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, years ago when we were kids, it'd be in the middle of the summer, and it was slow. I mean, it wasn't running like this at all. We would walk across the top of that. Now you wouldn't dare.
No.
There wasn't that much water, and we were stupid.
Oh, I've done things like that.
Yeah.
In different places.
Yeah.
But, you know, we all survived to tell about it.
Right. Manaville was named after the Manter brothers, Riley and Peter. Farmed here, they settled here, and then eventually came into this small village. This is, and what Manaville was known for, and there's buildings around that, from the soft yellow limestone that was quarried outside of town. And it was soft at first, so you could carve anything you wanted into, but then you built from it, and as the environment, it was in the environment rather than in the ground, it hardened, which was so cool. This was made from that limestone in the Hubble House, which we'll show you, and other buildings. But this is the old Opera House, and all summer long they have melodramas. They have the villain,
Like
and
the guy behind you.
and the heroine, the type that is put on the railroad tracks, and the hero comes and rescues her at the very last minute. So this is.
Why
this
are we
is,
not going to this?
I don't know if it's open.
Yeah, it's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Well, that's not today at all.
Right? That's probably why, huh?
Okay.
Otherwise, it would have been fun. And you're supposed to boo the
right.
villain and yay the hero. So it's a fun thing for people to do.
We'll have to come back.
Yeah.
This was probably an old schoolhouse from the 1800s, back when it was prairie, and there was nothing around. And then behind us right here,
Is on courthouse, and it was either the oldest or one of the oldest in Minnesota.
yep, built in like 1850 something.
This church and the courthouse are good examples of the beautiful pale yellow limestone that were quarried outside of town.
Yeah. What a beautiful shot of Manorville right here. Well, this building was built in 1854. There's just a sign over there. 1854. This is how we know stuff. We just had our lovely meal here at the Hubble House.
Yes, we
and
did.
I am, 5 decades old, and this is the first time I've ever eaten here. And I am so pleased. The food was fantastic. It was
very
like
good.
going back in time walking in there. It was decorated as like an old school supper club.
It was built by Mr. Hubble, one of the founders of Manorville. And Mr. Hubble built it as a hotel. And the stagecoaches would come up, and people disembark on the stagecoach route and either stay in the hotel and have supper downstairs. Many of the class reunions that we've had over the years for both my husband and I, we've celebrated here. So,
And how many people did you graduate with?
48.
And Dad?
I think it was 35.
Yeah, small class. So you all have kept in touch over the years.
Yeah.
I graduated with 700 kids,
Yeah.
and my reunions were not the same.
No.
At all.
I don't imagine.
But yeah, what a great experience to have all of your celebrations here. That kind of wraps up our whole entire Casson Going Down Memory Lane series for Mom. I have had a blast. I've heard a lot of these stories in the past, but it's been fun for her to show me actually where these things took place. And so Shanae had a good time,
Yes.
and we are the better for it. So
Yes.
thank you for sharing all this.
You're
Hopefully you
welcome.
guys enjoyed what small town America was like back then.
Thank you, Keel, for going down with me and videoing all of this so that we have this in the archives for you kids and for grandkids to maybe watch over the years.
Yeah, and you know what? Thanks so much for sharing about your polio experience, because I know that wasn't super easy. And again, we're all the better for it to know a little bit about that, because we've all been curious throughout the years. And so that took a lot of bravery for you to share that with us. And I just thank you for that.
You're welcome. It's not always been easy. I put it in a spot.
She has compartmentalized a lot of that. Yeah.
Yes, all my life. So to drag it up and share it is not always the easiest thing to do. But if somebody's interested in it or has an interest in the polio epidemics of those times or illness.
And why Mom uses a cane.
Yeah, I just started using the cane about 10 years ago. I was diagnosed with post-polio syndrome, which is a weakening of the muscles. So I found that I really needed a cane for stability and for strength. So I've been using it ever since. And this is my Sunday go-to-meeting cane.
It's your Snoop Dogg stick.
No, my Sunday go-to-meeting cane.
Yeah, well, according to Dave, it's your Snoop Dogg stick.
Yeah, we don't listen to Dave always.
You're awesome. I love you.
Love you too, darling.
And we'll see you in the next vlog.
Alrighty.